Hello, hope everyone is having a good day. So I decided to do something I haven't done on this channel before. I wanted to do something a little different. I know there's a lot of ranking videos of artists and bands' discographies. I wanted to try and do that myself, see how it goes. This is unscripted, so there's going to be a lot of ums. So, well, at least I'll try not to do that. And here I go doing it. So I am ranking the discography of AC/DC today. AC/DC is my favorite band. They were the first band I ever loved. I was introduced to them at a very, very young age. Um, the first album I ever heard of theirs was, of course, Back in Black. I think that's many fans' first AC/DC album that they ever heard. Then the second I heard was Ball Breaker because I was very young when Ball Breaker came out, so that was the first one I was alive for, and my dad listened to that a lot. So that was my first love when it came to music, at least. I know that they get a lot of flack for, a lot of people call their music simplistic or repetitive, formulaic. Some people even go as far as to call it misogynist or sexist. I can see where they're coming from with the latter, but I don't think they're a sexist band. It's just there's a lot of rock bands back in the day that they mostly just wrote songs about women and sex. So it's just how it was. It's not it's all in good fun. It's all tongue in cheek. So it's whatever. If you want to think that, but whatever. So, what I love about them, what I've always loved about them, is they're the only band I can think of, for the most part, that has never bullshitted around with their music. Like they never really completely changed their sound like a lot of other bands. The closest I can think of course, well, when Brian Johnson came in after Bon Scott's death, I think they got a little heavier, but not like completely drastic. With Blow Up Your Video, they changed their sound a little bit to make it a little more mainstream, but we'll get into that when we get into that. So I made up a couple of my own rules for this. I got my list right here. I'm not including the Australian releases. I'm not including TNT and the Australian High Voltage because we practically got those here in America, but kind of split up. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to go over 74 Jailbreak because that was just an EP. But my thoughts on 74 Jailbreak, I think it's okay. It's just 5 songs only, nothing too special, but it's got Jailbreak, which is great. You Ain't Got a Hold on Me. Show Business, I never cared for. Soul Stripper, it's great. Baby Please Don't Go, really one of the only covers they ever did, and it's all right. But it's not something I grab and listen to all the time unless I'm listening to their discography all the way through. So I'm going to start off with an album I am including on here because some people don't include this one, but I am going to include it. It is going to be Who Made Who as the first. So this is basically just a greatest hits. This is the only way I don't have any physical copies, so I'm using an MP3 player. But this is basically a greatest hits album. They made this for the Maximum Overdrive film. Stephen King was a huge AC/DC fan. I'm assuming he still is. And there's only one new song on it, Who Made Who, which is a great song, one of my favorite songs of theirs that they ever did, and 2 instrumentals, Chase the Ace and DT, which they never did. They never did instrumentals. Those are the only 2 I can think of aside from Fling Thing. But yeah, I'm putting it at the bottom because it's essentially a greatest hits record. So yeah, Who Made Who is a great song, but and the remix of Shake Your Foundations is really good. I think they should have remixed the entire Fly on the Wall album, and I'll get to that when I get to that as well. So next is going to be Rock or Bust. Yeah, I was really into this when it came out. It's a very okay album. It's I don't think any album they have is bad. This is just a perfectly fine album. Um, and it came out at a rough time for AC during a rough time for ACDC. It was after Malcolm died. The first album they did without Malcolm. His nephew took over. I think his name I should have looked it up. Steve Young, I think. That might be wrong. Might be totally incorrect. But yeah, it's passable. I think the production's slightly better than it was on Black Ice. I think Black Ice suffers a little bit from that kind of loudness war sound, just a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it has a couple. It's mostly just forgettable songs. Dogs of War is really good. I love that song. Um, it has one of my least favorite AC/DC songs, Misadventure. What a terrible title and what a terrible song. It is awful. The chorus is one of the worst choruses they've ever done. It's really bad. Um, but yeah, so that's Rock or Bust. Okay, so next, this is going to piss a lot of people off. I should note I am more of a Brian Johnson fan than a Bon Scott fan, so a lot of Brian Johnsons are going to be higher than you might think. So I apologize to all the Bon Scott aficionados. I love Bon Scott too, but I grew up with Brian Johnson, so I'm a little more biased for the Brian Johnson years. But I'm going with Black Ice next. Again, a good album. I think it's a little bloated because AC/DC have never done an album this long before or since. Um, I think it's over an hour long, maybe 50 minutes, 55 minutes, something. That is way too long for an AC/DC album. It's got a lot of filler in it, but I think the first 4 or 5 tracks, Rock and Roll Train, Skies on Fire, Big Jack, Anything Goes, War Machine, those are fantastic songs. Even Anything Goes, I love Anything Goes. A little different from something things they've done before, but I like it. Um, I think one problem with Black Ice is that this album was shoved down people's throats at Walmart. Excuse me. When this came out, for the first 2 years this album was out, you couldn't go into a Walmart without them playing this on a stereo, at least where I live. Um, they just played this album over and over and over all day long. I don't know why, for that long. So a lot of those songs I got really sick of because every time I went into Walmart, I had to hear them. Okay. Next up is going to be the recent one from, God, almost 3 years ago, Power Up. Now, I think this is much, much better than Black Ice and Rock or Bust, especially Rock or Bust. I just think they sound more reinvigorated in this than they do on Black Ice to me. I don't know why. Um, and I've noticed something they've done with these last 3 albums is they kind of put a semi-ballady song on them. Anything Goes with Black Ice, um, Rock the Blues Away with Rock or Bust, and Through the Mists of Time with Power Up. Through the Mists of Time is actually a really good song. Um, I believe they said it was dedicated to Malcolm, and you can kind of tell it's got some heart to it, and I really like that song. I really like the production. I think production in music lately has gotten better than it was in the 2010s. I think a lot of producers have learned the lesson from the loudness war. You don't have to make everything so loud that everything's clipping. I can't stand that. A lot of people don't really notice it. I do. It's really bad with like Death Magnetic by Metallica, or of course Californication by Chili Peppers, and 13 by Black Sabbath. So yeah, I think production has gotten better with music since the 2010s. But Power Up was a really strong return. Came out near the end of 2020. I think it was a great way to end that year. AC/DC came along at the right time, and just had some nice, feel-good, rocking tunes. What more can you ask for from them? Okay, this one is going to really piss people off. So next, I have Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap. Yeah, I know. This is considered a classic album for AC/DC fans. Now, I like it. I like every album of theirs. But I think this is hands down the worst Bon Scott album. It's got great songs like Love at First feels good. Problem Child's amazing. There's going to be some rockin' and Ride On. Oh, I love Ride On. And Squealer. I love Squealer. But it's really hampered down with Big Balls and Rocker and Ain't No Fun Waiting Around to Be a Millionaire, which is the longest song they ever did. I used to love that song, but it's kind of tedious listening to now. And Big Balls, I used to, it was funny the first few times, but it's more of a joke song. And Rocker, I always hated Rocker. There's not many songs of theirs I hate. Rocker is one I absolutely hate. I don't know. It's just too rockabilly, kind of Chuck Berry sounding. I don't know. Nothing wrong with that. I just don't like it when AC/DC does it. It's just, I don't know. I really don't like that kind of sound. And AC/DC is just not that great at doing really fast songs. And that might be the fastest song they've ever done. And I kind of skip it most of the time if it's shuffling through my AC/DC playlist. Okay, next up is going to be Blow Up Your Video from 1988. This was their kind of somewhat attempt at becoming a little more mainstream, becoming MTV friendly. And the production really suffers from that. I think it might be the most dated sounding AC/DC album. That being said, I think there's some really underrated tunes on this. I have a soft spot for Heat Seeker. I always like that song. I know it's a little corny. I love Mean Streak. I love Go Zone, Kissin' Dynamite, Some Sin for Nothing, Two's Up. Two's Up might be one of the darkest sounding AC/DC songs, and I like it when they kind of have that kind of eerie sound, kind of like that Hell's Bells, Razor's Edge kind of sound. But yeah, I think Two's Up is incredibly underrated. Rough Stuff, it's all right. This Means War, This Means War actually sounds a little bit like a precursor to Thunderstruck, the riff at least. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go listen to This Means War and tell me you don't hear a little bit of Thunderstruck in there. But Blow Up Your Video, I think is... I want to say it's underrated, but at the same time, I can really understand why it's somewhat forgotten. I like it personally. I don't love it. I do like it a lot, though. And I do put this one in once in a while. So, like I said, for some of those songs alone, Kissin' Dynamite and Two's Up. Oh, man. Nick of Time. I forgot about Nick of Time. I love that song. But yeah, decent album. Not a great one, but a very decent one. And I think if you're just coming into AC/DC, do not start with this one. Listen to a few Bon Scott and Brian Johnson ones, and then give Blow Up Your Video a chance. And, open your mind up a little bit, and you might like it. But can't promise that. All right, next up. Again, I might piss people off with this one, but I'm going with High Voltage, the debut album in America. So, High Voltage, let me show it again. High Voltage, I think, is much better than Dirty Deeds. This has better songs. Of course, it has It's a Long Way to the Top, which is one of Bon Scott's most recognized and beloved songs. Rock and Roll Singer, I think, is underrated. The Jack's okay, but I do love the guitar solos in it. Live Wire is really good. I love that opening. TNT, overplayed, but still got a groove to it once in a while. Can I Sit Next to You, Girl, which is actually the first song they ever wrote with the original singer, Dave. It's either Dave Evans or Mark Evans. I always get those two confused, but I think it's Dave Evans. And you got She's Got Balls, the title track, High Voltage. And Little Lover, a very underrated song, very similar to the Jack. I think it's much better, though. I think if that were the more popular kind of slow bluesy song than the Jack, that would be much better. But it's an underrated gem, I would say, that song. But High Voltage is a really good debut. I wouldn't put it in like the top 5 or 10 debuts of all time, but it is very good. I would put it in at least the top 40 or 50 debuts, maybe a little higher than that. But really good start, very solid start. Critics absolutely trashed this album when it first came out. I don't understand why, but yeah, very good debut. And let's see, I will go on to the next. Okay, next is Ball Breaker from 1995. I think this album gets a little too much hate. A lot of people don't like the production on it. I, for one, actually really love the production. I think it's very clean, but not like Razor's Edge clean, where it's very glossy, but it's kind of a raw, clean sound. I can't explain it. You can kind of hear the humming of the amp, but at the same time, it really sounds like you're sitting in the middle of a room, like a room like this, with AC/DC just playing right there in front of you. That's what it sounds like to me, and I absolutely love that kind of production. You've got great songs like "Hard as a Rock," "Cover You in Oil," "The Fuhrer." "The Fuhrer" is another kind of one of those kind of more eerie sounding AC/DC riffs. "Boogeyman," never cared for that much, but "Honey Roll" is great. "Burning Alive" is my favorite song on here. Absolutely great, heavy song. Hail Caesar's decent. "Love Bomb," yeah. "Caught with Your Pants Down," "Whiskey on the Rocks" is good, and the title track "Ball Breaker," absolutely love it. But "Ball Breaker," I think it gets a little too much hate. I think it should be given a second look by some people. And yeah, I love I also love the production on it. So yeah. Okay, next we're kind of going with the companion piece to "Ball Breaker," "Stiff Upper Lip." Came out in 2000. I think "Ball Breaker" was produced by Rick Rubin. This was not. At least I don't think. However, the production on it sounds almost identical to "Ball Breaker." It's crazy. And again, I love that production. I think for this kind of sound that they're going for, it works. I think for this and "Ball Breaker," they have a little bit more of a stripped down blues sound, especially with "Stiff Upper Lip." "Stiff Upper Lip's" almost like a straight up blues record for them, blues rock record for them almost. "Stiff Upper Lip," the title track is great. "Meltdown" is great. "House of Jazz," "Hold Me Back," Can't Stop Rock and Roll," "Can't Stand Still," "Damned," I never cared for. "All Screwed Up" is good. Satellite Blues," and "Give It Up." Okay, I will admit they do sound very similar. "Satellite Blues" is a little better. But yeah, I think just like with "Ball Breaker," I think people hate on it a little too much. I think people should give it a second chance. I think it's slightly better than "Ball Breaker." I don't know. I kind of like the more bluesy sound of this one. I don't know why. It's just something about it. I've always had a soft spot for this one. All right, coming up next is another Bon Scott one, "Let There Be Rock." Now, "Let There Be Rock," I think, is the first really great Bon Scott AC/DC album. It's a very raw sound. This might be the most raw sounding AC/DC album. At the beginning of every song, you can hear the amp humming, or you can hear like them picking up the guitar or like accidentally hitting a string before playing the song. I mean, it's so raw sounding. And of course, got great songs. There is really not a bad song on here. "Go Down," "Dog Eat Dog," "Let There Be Rock." "Overdose." They put "Problem Child" on here again because in the Australian release they had "Crapsody in Blue," which is a good song. I think it really would have fit on here, but for some reason America was a little offended by that song, so they took it out and put "Problem Child" back on here. So in America we have 2 albums with "Problem Child," which is a little ridiculous. "Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be" and "Whole Lotta Rosie," all great songs. Very heavy sounding album. "Bad Boy Boogie," forgot about "Bad Boy Boogie," great song. Yeah, this is a really good album all in all, and I think it's an essential AC/DC album. All right, coming up next, we are at the point now, I'd say from like "Let There Be Rock" onward, we're at the point where I absolutely adore these albums. So coming up next is "The Razor's Edge" from 1990, produced by Brendan O'Brien, I believe. Could be wrong. This is when they had Chris Slade as the drummer. He was, I think, a very decent drummer. Actually, a very good drummer, I should say. I don't know if he fit in with AC/DC for their sound, but I think he did the job. This was the only album he was ever on, but I think he really did a good job. And this is a very glossy sounding album, so a lot of people might be turned off by that. It kind of sounds more like 80s Aerosmith, like it sounds more like a Permanent Vacation kind of sound. But I like it. I like that this has a little bit of a different sound because I think it gives it a little more of an identity. But of course, you have "Thunderstruck," which is a classic. Everyone knows that. "Fire Your Guns." "Money Talks," which is one of my favorite AC/DC songs. Absolutely love it. Never get tired of it. "The Razor's Edge" title track. Amazing. Actually, my most hated AC/DC song of all time is on here, "Mistress for Christmas." I despise that song. I hate it. I hate it, hate it, hate it. Yeah, it's just such a bad song. "Rock Your Heart Out's decent. Are You Ready? Are You Ready? Kicks ass. "Got You by the Balls." "Let's Make It." "Shot of Love." I think the album ends with a whimper. It should have ended. It should have had maybe 10 tracks instead of 12. Get "Mistress for Christmas" out of there. Yeah, but it ends with "Goodbye and Good Riddance to Bad Luck" and "If You Dare," 2 songs I really don't care for either. But it is a very, very good album. It was pretty much their big comeback after the dark ages for them in the 80s. And yeah, what a hell of a way to return. This was a big seller, big deal, not critically, but sales wise and everything. It kind of reinvigorated their career. They got a couple years later, AC/DC Live came out. So if we didn't have this album, we probably wouldn't have even gotten that big live album. It's a really great live album. I'm not a big live album guy, but it's a very good one. Okay, next is going to be Powerage. Powerage, however you want to pronounce it. So this is an amazing Bon Scott album. I think this is a nearly perfect album. You've got Rock and Roll Damnation, one of their greatest songs, Down Payment Blues, Give Me a Bullet, kind of a precursor to Highway to Hell, Riff Raff, Sin City, What's Next to the Moon, Gone Shootin'. Oh my God, I love Gone Shootin'. One of the greatest riffs just ever. Listen to that song. It is so great. It ends with two I'm not crazy about, but they're not bad. Kicked in the Teeth and what's the other one? Up to My Neck and You. I think they're okay rockers. But everything else on there just kicks absolute ass. That is the most underrated Bon Scott album. Some people call it their most mature album because thinking about it, I don't think there is one song about sex on here. It's mainly about drug use and money problems and just more life things. But yeah, again, great album, worth checking out if you're just getting to AC/DC. That's not a bad one to start with. It's not the first one I would start with, but it's one of at least the top 5 I would start with if you're just getting into AC/DC. All right, this one may be a little obvious, but next is Highway to Hell, my favorite Bon Scott AC/DC album. This album is just absolutely fantastic. This is the first one they got Mutt Lange to produce. This was a huge album and is considered by many to be one of the greatest albums of all time. I would completely agree with that. It's got the classic but overplayed Highway to Hell. One of the first guitar riffs I think most guitar players learn. Girls Got Rhythm is a great song. Walk All Over You, Touch Too Much. Oh, I love that song. Beating Around the Bush is a completely underrated song. That is one of the greatest guitar riffs ever. Shot Down in Flames. Get It Hot, I could do without. If You Want Blood, You've Got It is my favorite Bon Scott song. Night Prowler, absolutely perfect way to end that album. Such a dark sounding song. And yeah, just a great guitar solo in it. Great kind of, again, that eerie sounding riff. Just such a great song. Love Hungry Man, I used to actually really like, but now I kind of can't stand that song. It's pretty bad, and even Angus Young himself doesn't like it, and yeah, I can see why. Not a very good song, but all in all, it is a near perfect album. All right, these next few, you're really going to be wondering why they're this high, but like I said, I am more of a Brian Johnson fan, so keep that in mind. But next is For Those About to Rock, We Salute You. Now, I think that this is a perfect album. I think every single song is great on it. And I think it is probably the darkest sounding AC/DC album. Such just a dark, just nasty sound. The last one produced by Mutt Lange. Every song on it I love. For Those About to Rock. I Put the Finger on You, Let's Get It Up. Inject the Venom. Snowballed. Evil Walks. COD. Night of the Long Knives. Breaking the Rules. Spellbound. Every song is great. And a lot of people really hate on this album now. A lot of people say, well, it's not as good as Back in Black. Yeah, true, it's not. But, this is, I think, is as good a follow-up as you could possibly do. I think they went in a little bit of a different direction with this one, with that darker sound. And, yeah, I think a lot of people just didn't dig it when it came out. It went number 1. It was a big seller, but critically and even fan-wise, people just don't love this as much as they used to, and I don't understand why. I just absolutely love this album. Love it. Most of my favorite AC/DC songs are right there. Inject the Venom, Evil Walks, for example. Fantastic. All right. These next couple are going to be very controversial. Next is Flick of the Switch. I think one of the most underrated albums in existence. Yeah, I love the raw production on this. A lot of people don't. They did away with Mutt Lange, and AC/DC produced it themselves. I love the way it sounds. I don't care what anyone says. I love the way Brian Johnson sounds. This is, I think, the last album where Brian Johnson sounds amazing. Afterwards, you're kind of losing it a little bit, but he sounds fantastic on this album. Um, and again, I love every song on here. This is, I think, a perfect album as well. Rising Power, This House is on Fire, the title track, Nervous Shakedown, one of the best songs they ever did. Love that song. Love the chorus. Landslide, Guns for Hire, Deep in the Hole, Bedlam in Belgium, Badlands, and Brain Shake. Love all of them. I think this is a completely underrated album, like I said. And for some reason, I have seen some AC/DC posters with their entire discography on it, and Flick of the Switch is not on it. Like, it's almost like they're ashamed of it, and I don't understand why. This album kicks ass, and if you're sick of the Back in Black album and you want something different, get Flick of the Switch. It actually took me a couple of listens to really love it and appreciate it, but I'm telling you, once you love this album, you will never stop loving it. It is that good. Okay, this might be the most controversial pick of them all. My number 2 pick is Fly on the Wall. Why the hell would you have this at number 2? Well, it's one of the most nostalgic AC/DC albums for me. And plus, the fact that it has my favorite AC/DC song of all time, Shake Your Foundations, doesn't hurt either. But I love the title track. I love First Blood, Danger, Sink the Pink, Back in Business, Hell or High Water, Stand Up. I absolutely love Stand Up. But yeah, Sin for the Man, I think is okay. So why am I picking this over Flick of the Switch if I just said Flick of the Switch is perfect? Well, I think it's my nostalgia goggles for this one. I really do love Shake Your Foundations a lot. I think that really makes the album. But again, I love Stand Up. I love Hell or High Water. Absolutely great songs. The production is the absolute worst thing about this. Brian Johnson's lyrics sometimes, if you don't know what he's saying, they're kind of indecipherable. It sounds like he's recording in another room while everyone else is in the same room, Yeah, this album is a big example of one that could use a remaster, a proper remaster, actually go in and find the original tapes and actually try to fix the sound like they did with Shake Your Foundations on the Who Made Who album. I think it could be done. There's actually a video I found on YouTube not too long ago where someone remastered the whole Fly on the Wall album themselves. Some of the songs work, some don't. Stand Up sounds 10 times better remastered through that guy's video. Try and find that. I can't think of the name of the YouTuber, but yeah, definitely look for that. Yeah, still my second favorite AC/DC album. I love it, love it, love it. Listen to it all the time. But I think we all know what my number 1 is if you're doing process of elimination. Surprise, surprise. Back in Black is my number 1 AC/DC album. Always has been. It was the first one I ever heard. It's the first one most AC/DC fans ever heard. The production is the absolute best of any AC/DC album. Again, Mutt Lange produced this one. This was the first one after Bon Scott passed, and they just completely... Who would have thought that they would top Highway to Hell? You got Hell's Bells, you have Shoot to Thrill, What Do You Do for Money, Honey, Giving the Dog a Bone, my favorite song on there, Let Me Put My Love Into You. Back in Black, I can kind of go without hearing the title track, but I listen to that title track maybe once a year. It is a good song if you haven't heard it in a while, but a lot of people just play that song to death and run it into the damn ground. Same with You Shook Me All Night Long. Those two back to back makes it a little tough of a listen if you're listening to the whole thing, at least for me. But You Shook Me All Night Long, I will say, is kind of a guilty pleasure song for me. So Have a Drink on Me, great song. Shake a Leg, probably the most underrated song on this album. And then Rock and Roll Ain't Noise Pollution, probably the greatest album closer they ever did. Love that song. It is a fantastic way to close it. And they never topped it. A lot of people expected Back in Black Part 2. After that, for those about to rock, they didn't get it. Black Ice, a lot of people considered Back in Black Part 2. I completely disagree with that, but okay, whatever. There never was a Back in Black Part 2, and there never will be. And I think once you get over that, then maybe you would learn to love the 80s post Back in Black era. And even the Bon Scott era. There's a lot of people out there who don't even know that there were two singers. A lot of people say, well, they sound exactly the same. They do not. I don't know what these people are talking about. Bon Scott and Brian Johnson sound nothing alike, but whatever. So yeah, that was my ranking. Again, it was Who Made Who, Rock or Bust, Black Ice, Power Up, Dirty Deeds, Blow Up Your Video, High Voltage, Ball Breaker, Stiff Upper Lip, Let There Be Rock, Razor's Edge, Power Age, Highway to Hell, For Those About to Rock, Flick of the Switch, Fly on the Wall, and Back in Black. That could change any day now. It was actually really hard because Bon Scott era and Brian Johnson era, it was kind of hard putting those two together. I almost did it separate and said, here's the Bon Scott ranked, here's the Brian Johnson ranked. But, I figured it out, figured my ranking, and like I said, it could change any minute. But yeah, that's just my opinion on the AC/DC discography. That's my ranking of it. And like I said, this was completely unscripted, which is probably very obvious with all the mistakes I'm making and stumbling over my words. I might do this again, so we'll see how it turns out. Hope everyone has a great day.